welcome to Espresso with Saul. Well, look what we have here today. Well, for starters, I haven't been able to get out in the field and do some videos for, open live fire shooting for you guys. So I thought I'd break this out and show you what I'm working on, at least. This is my CMMG Mark III. It's got a 16-inch SST barrel. I'm not really sure. I think that might be a chrome moly barrel, but I'm not positive. I know it's a stainless something. I have an Atlas bipod on it. I have a Magpul Pro Mag 50 round drum mag for it. And yeah, essentially this is an AR-10. I do have the iron sights for it, the backup iron sights, which I haven't even used yet, probably should. And then on top is a Trijicon REAP-IR. Here's the box for this bad boy. This is the 60mm version of a thermal imaging scope. And it's for short to long range. Now, problem with having a device like this is finding an area to find out how far is long range for this. I suspect it's probably 500 or 600 yards. We'll see if it's farther than that. I haven't really been able to test it out at long ranges yet. The other thing that I have on top here, well, here, let me show you this. It typically takes these CR batteries right here, but they're known to blow through these batteries very quickly. So I had an aftermarket lid that I purchased for the battery pack, and then I purchased the battery pack also, and this battery pack lasts for 12 to 13 hours out in the field. That makes it much more usable. Now, I'm assuming that they're working on this and they're coming up with newer and cooler stuff. I believe this has been out for at least a couple of years now, so I'm sure something even, more expensive and more high speed has come out, and hopefully lighter. I'd really love to do a video to show you guys on how the thermal works. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that, or if I'm going to be able to do that with the equipment that I own. If nothing else, we'll take it out and show you at least how it, shoots. But I'd like to do a little bit more. So if you've got some ideas, please go ahead, hit me up. Give me a shout out in the comments, and I'll listen to different ideas on how I can pull this off. But, oh, what's this for? Is this my field rifle? No, I don't think so. This thing weighs probably more than 12 pounds. I haven't weighed it with all of the equipment, and I definitely haven't weighed it with a fully loaded magazine, so I'm suspecting that this is somewhere in the 12 to 15 pound range. I definitely wouldn't be carrying this anywhere. This would be more of a stay back at camp and hold down the fort setup that I have right here. Or, in a perfect world, I'd get a can for it and take it out hog hunting down in Texas. As somebody who's only, the only time I've ever spent in Texas has been in an airport, I don't know when I'll be able to do that, but hopefully one of these years that will go on the to-do list. I would love to take this out hog hunting, as long as, like I say, we're not running through the woods. But let's step on over here, have a shot of espresso. I'm here. You guys have been asking for the coffee. Well, it's right here. Let's go ahead and pour some. And I think what we'll do is have a little Paul Harrell story time. Not going to be an hour, so I can't call it story hour. Now that's looking good already. I know. I should find something to say during this time while we're waiting for it. I probably should have gotten started on the story time, but wow, that cream is fantastic. La crema, as they call it. Here, check this out. That is a fantastic looking shot of espresso. Oh wow, that is really good. Okay. Let's see. Paul Harrell stories. Well, I think I can start, I think I've got some from the early days, back when I would have been in my early to mid 20s. Most of them probably pretty early 20s. I've got one for you here. Paul Harrell wedding story. Paul had to get married more than once in order to do it right. And at one of his weddings, he, I believe it was his mom or his parents, had set up a wedding reception. And he told me about a week in advance, when we were working together at the building supply company that I told you guys about before. And he says, "Hey man, I'm going to need you to go to this." I said, "Well, why?" "Look, it's a wedding reception. My mom set it up. Nobody there. I don't know anybody. They're just my parents' friends and some family members." So yes, he did know some people there, but they weren't really his friends. So he's telling me, "Yeah, you got to go to this." I'm like, "Okay, sure, whatever, man." Thinking, yeah, I don't think I'm going to show up to this. Well, the day before, he says, "Okay, it's tomorrow. Be ready. Be ready in the morning." Like, yeah, sure, okay. So what did I do the evening before? I went out, hit the town, went out and did whatever it is that I did. And then I came back home and I went to bed at whatever time it was, probably 1 or 2 in the morning, with zero intention of getting up in the morning and going to this darn thing. So what does he do? He shows up at my place and starts pounding on the door. "All right, come on, let's go. You need to get up and get ready." I ended up going to this thing. He drug me out of bed. He drove me to the wedding reception, and then he drove me home from the wedding reception. So he had to have me there. I ended up lightening the mood for him a little bit by making some, what I thought at the time were, humorous attempts to lighten up the party and everything. But I didn't know anybody there besides Paul. So there's one for you. Let's see, right about that time, the first time Paul took me hunting, I didn't have my own rifle. I think at that time I'd had my second pistol ever, which was the H&K VP70Z that we talked about in a previous episode. And so I had that, and I borrowed a 30-30, I think it was a Stevens bolt action, not a lever action rifle, but a bolt action hunting rifle from my parents. And I showed up, and with probably no gear whatsoever, just a couple guns and some ammo. So we go out to this area that I've never been to, and Paul says, "Okay, I'm going to go this way, and you're going to go this way, and we'll meet around when it's done." Well, this is a couple hours before dark. This is an evening hunt. So, all right, no problem. And I get out there, and I do my route, and I think I'm following his instructions just fine until I get to this slow-moving body of water. I've got a small river in front of me. It's very slow-moving, looks very deep, And Paul didn't mention a slow-moving river. Well, crap. I think to myself, I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere and not followed his instructions properly. I'm not going to wade across this or swim across this darn river. So I ended up looping back around and heading back the way I came. Needless to say, I didn't quite make it back in time before it got dark. And there were a lot of trees. This was a wooded area. The sun was not out, before it set. It was a cloudy day. So I'm in the woods in a place that I don't know, and I can't see my hand this close to my face. It is so incredibly dark. I'm trying to walk through the woods without tripping and falling. And it was at that point I realized, oh yeah, 3 shots for a distress call. So I did my 3-shot distress. Oh, by the way, yes. No, I did not have a flashlight or anything like that with me. I had pretty much no gear whatsoever. This was early on hanging out with Paul. So, he was I think he was testing me at that point in time. But anyway, I fire 3 shots. He fires a shot back. I can kind of get the range on where he is. I work my way up and I fire a few more shots, 3 more shots, a couple more times before we finally get in range where he can yell me in. And I make it out of the woods. And he says, well, why didn't you meet me at such and such? I said, well, there's this river in the way. I said, you would have mentioned that. So I must have gotten a wrong turn. He says, no. I just walked across that darn thing and went the other side. So he failed to mention a small river, a creek, a stream. Like I say, apparently wherever it was that I went across, it was super deep, but I guess in some other areas it wasn't quite so much. Going prepared is a whole lot better of an idea than walking around out there with nothing. But at least I kept my cool. I remembered what I was supposed to do, and all's well that ends well. Another time we were hunting in the exact same area, and I ran into my very first bear out there. Now I'm 6'4", you probably can't tell here on the camera, so I'm a decent sized guy, and I'm walking through this grass that must be 8 feet tall. It's at least 7 feet tall. I'm walking through a grassy area, and Paul's probably 150, 200 yards away, but I'm walking through some really, really thick grass, and I hear what sounds like a freight train just start right next to me. I mean, it must have been 15, 20 feet away in this tall grass. That's rather unnerving when you hear something like that. And I was like, what the heck is that? I never heard anything like that before. Deer, you'll hear bloop, bloop, bloop. But this was a freight train just charging. Wow. Well, I keep walking after I hear it finally fade away, and I get to this spot where there's like a semicircle of all this grass that has been matted down, and then the other 1/3 part of the circle is really tall blackberry bushes. And all of a sudden I'm looking around. It's been matted down by something big. Well, there's bear scat in there also. I had pretty much stumbled upon where a bear was just hanging out, spending his days. So anyway, that was pretty cool. That same hunt, sorry, this story doesn't actually include a whole lot of Paul on this one, but that same hunt I ran into a marijuana grow out there. And I thought, wow, this is kind of weird. It wasn't very big, but the funny thing is I was really casual about it, and then I started thinking to myself, booby traps and armed guards. Yes, I'm armed with a hunting rifle, but I'm thinking armed guards and booby traps, I need to get the heck out of there. Told Paul about it, and we ended up telling Paul's father about that too. Anyway, who was a cop at the time. But needless to say, we didn't actually go back and hunt that area very much after that. So that was an interesting day. And now, well, shoot, I've got bear in my freezer, so I'm not quite as startled by them as I was that very first time. Oh, one more story for you. What the heck, before we call this good. Secret Island Training Camp. That was a place that we would go to practice shooting drills. We would go camp, we would hike, we would pretty much do all sorts of really cool things out there. Sometimes we just go out there to spend the night and hang out. And Paul had set up the Death Ninja evening. What's the Death Ninja? Well, the Death Ninja happened to be one of our friends, and Paul assigned him as the job of the Death Ninja, which we'll get back to here shortly. It was me, Joe, and Paul, and we were going to go spend the night out at the rock pit, actually on the hill above the rock quarry, and set up camp, and where we would set up an actual perimeter because we knew the Death Ninja was in the area at night, and so we would have to spend the night out on the ground with just our gear that we had. Now, by that time, I think I'd acquired, a cartridge belt and some rudimentary gear, unlike I did with that hunting trip. So, I was a little farther along in my Paul experience than I was at the initial hunt. But we were out there, we were going to spend the night in our space blankets so we could train in our space blankets and that type of stuff. So Paul was thinking to himself, Death Ninja's probably going to show up in early to mid-evening. He's not going to show up, first thing in the morning or anything like that. So we went in 3-hour stints. Joe would be first watch from 9 to midnight. I would be second watch from midnight to 3. Yeah, I drew the short stick. And Paul would watch from 3 until 6 in the morning. Well, we set up a perimeter around this camp. And we set up essentially what we did is we wired a bunch of tin cans together, and inside the tin cans we put a bunch of rocks in there, and we had the perimeter of our camp set up, and we just set that up behind us. We did a couple other traps also, so we could hear the Death Ninja approaching and wouldn't get surprised by him. Funny, we were out in this area just 2 years ago. And actually, the pictures that you saw up on my channel in the posts, that was our last trip up to Secret Island. And we actually still found some of the strung up tin cans that were on they're rusting out and disappearing, but we still found some of those tin cans from many, many years ago. So that was really kind of fun to get up there and see that they're still up there on the perimeter of that camp. Sorry for the break in the film there. I actually mentioned Joe's real name, so I had to do a retake on this, but Joe ended up taking the first stint from 9 to midnight, and he didn't see any sign of Death Ninja. Well, I got up, and after some really lousy sleeping for the first 3 hours, I didn't see any sign of Death Ninja either. I ended up waking up Paul and going back to sleep. And we woke up sometime between 4 and 4:30 in the morning to Paul shouting, "I got you, Death Ninja," while he's holding a flashlight. Of course, yes, we were armed up there, but we weren't using our guns to hold up the Death Ninja. So, but yeah, we all woke up and ended up, just, it was just a good time. You can look back and yeah, we sat around and we ate, Chef Boyardee ravioli or Dinty Moore stew in a can, maybe an MRE or two, and slept lousy, but yeah, just things that I think about, about my friend Paul, and I look back and go, I'm going to have to do that with my kids, because I'm not going to get to do that with him anymore. So hopefully you enjoyed what I was able to tell you this evening, and I appreciate you guys joining me for Espresso with Saul. I will talk to you all soon. Thank you. Take care now.